in the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Great Barrington Select Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so by following the instructions that are on the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. A little over a week ago, there was an extremely disturbing incident at the Macedonia Baptist Church. 2 offensive words were spray painted on the outside of the church. One of the words were aimed at the people of the Jewish faith. By defacing that church and conjuring up the image of white supremacy, the hurt was also spread to many groups, including those of the African American community. Great Barrington and Housatonic are a tight-knit community. We will not allow this despicable act to change who we are. We will not allow discrimination of any kind to tarnish our town. The elected leaders of this town, along with the administrative staff and employees, will not tolerate discrimination based on age, race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, or homelessness. We will always defend the rights of those people who are attacked, whether it be physically or by hate speech. Ask all of those affected by this incident to know they are not alone in denouncing this. The citizens of this town will stand arm in arm with you to show our support for you. We denounce discrimination of any form, whether locally, nationally, or internationally. We promise to work with you to heal the wounds of this event and to bring all affected groups together as one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Selectmen's announcements, statements. Lee, you're first up.
Sure. The Community Preservation Committee will be reviewing the Step 1 applications on Tuesday, October 6th at 5 p.m. to determine eligibility. So that's tomorrow night at 5 p.m. The CPC will be reviewing Step 1 applications.
Thank you. Bill?
Oh, nothing here.
Ed?
Nothing.
Okay, it's not on yet, so it is now time for town manager's report.
Thanks, Steve. So you can see on your agenda, I have quite a few updates tonight, but I'll keep them brief. And before I roll into them, I just wanted to update the board. I was asked at the last meeting if I could look into the current status of ownership for the Housatonic Water Tower. We were able to do that today, and in order to provide an update tonight. The tower is, first off, it's privately owned, so I just wanted to make that clear. Also, it's owned by an entity titled Monumental LLC, and it's on the same parcel of land as a section of mill located just behind the Housatonic Fire Station. So that's about all the information I have, but I just wanted to report back and answer that question. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to get those answered as well.
Thank you, Mark.
Sure. So first up on my list for tonight is a Housatonic Waterworks update. And I just wanted to inform the board and the public that we're in the process right now of working with 2 different engineering firms, DPC, which is a Massachusetts firm, and also AECOM, which is an international firm. And we expect to have written proposals from both of those companies within the next week or 2. They estimated somewhere in the range of 10 days. So we should have those soon. They actually had a joint meeting, the 2 separate engineers today, to communicate about how they could work together on this process. And according to Sean Van Duzen, our public works superintendent, they will focus on accomplishing 3 things in these reports. First off is they'll review the company's treatment and distribution system to identify long-term capital costs and liabilities. The second item he said was that they will review and propose solutions to water quality issues. And we just need to keep in mind that we have no authority to require improvements, but we could work with DEP to do that. And the third item would be to conduct an appraisal of the system to give us an idea of what we can expect to pay for this system if we acquire it. So that's all I have tonight on Housatonic Water. Other than, I guess, to report that we have not received much in the way of complaints in the past few weeks since the temperatures have cooled down. So again, we're committed to keeping this on the agenda, and I'll keep providing updates regardless of complaints coming in or not. So next on my list is just an opportunity. I'm going to take every opportunity I get from now until November 15th to just remind folks that our winter parking ban will go into effect on November 15th. And I believe that carries through March 30th of 2021. It prohibits overnight parking on town streets between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. During winter storm events. So just a reminder to everyone that vehicles may be ticketed, they may be towed, or both.
Mark, we went back and forth with the winter storm events thing. It's prohibited blanketly, whether there's a storm or not. I think the enforcement is different if there's a storm.
Okay, good to know. We will get a press release out. We just need to update the dates on it, and we'll get a press release out so that folks have that information. I realize we have some time, but I know November 15th will be here before we know it. So next on my list is a retirement announcement, and I just wanted to take an opportunity during my town manager time tonight to announce that Helen Kajemko, our executive assistant here in the town manager select board office, will be retiring at the end of this month. Helen has served the town for 26 years. She started here in 1994, working alongside 5 different town managers and at least 2 interim town managers that I can remember. So I just wanted to mention that officially. And Helen, if you're out there listening or watching tonight, I just wanted to thank you for your service to the town for all these years. Wish you well in your retirement, and let you know that we already miss you in town hall, but we'll miss you. We'll miss seeing you around here every day.
Mark, can I just make a comment just for the entire select board and for myself especially? Helen was so invaluable because of her historical knowledge and her deep caring for the town of Great Barrington. All I can say is whenever something's put on the agenda by Helen, I learned early on when I was chairman not to change it, not to do anything because it was right, and whatever I was going to do was going to be wrong. And I mean that. She did her research and things were done in the correct way. So Helen, you know how I feel about you, and we're going to miss you terribly, but I wish you the best in your retirement.
Yeah, I second and third that. Helen, thank you so much for all your support and your wonderful work for the town. We're going to miss you.
Yes. We're going to miss you.
Steve, before I move on to elderly transportation, it looks like Kate Burke has joined the meeting. If you could promote her while I'm talking
I
here.
will do that.
Thank you. So next up on my list is elderly transportation. And I know I've said this a few times now, and most people are aware that SBETC did close permanently on September 30th, which left a gap here in transportation for our elderly and disabled populations. But we do have transportation available for folks. All they need to do is call our Council on Aging at 528-1881 to schedule a ride. And just another brief update, we do expect to have, we have a van available to us now, and we're also connecting riders with drivers, but we do expect to have 3 vans in place, 3 BRTA vans in place by November 1st, if not sooner. And we're working with our neighbors and other South County towns to try and establish a regional transportation option to replace SBETC, but also expand the services to include nights and weekends. So we'll continue to update the public and the board at these meetings, and also through press releases and information on our website and Facebook page. virtual coffee meeting, 3E. I just wanted to take this opportunity also to announce that I'll be holding another virtual coffee session. I think this is my third now, and it will be Wednesday, October 14th at 10 a.m. We'll, of course, share that information through the usual media outlets through our website, Facebook page, and we'll also add it to the, or request that the chamber send it out on their email blast. And then finally for tonight, my updates, I have a brief update here for Great Barrington Libraries. And I'm going to ask Steve if you could promote Amanda DeGeorgis, our library director, while I finish here.
Yeah, all done.
Okay, thank you. So Amanda provided an executive summary, which was included in your packet on our two libraries. And she'd like to provide an update on operations during the COVID pandemic, what she's offering now and what to expect in the coming months.
Thank you for listening to me tonight. This is kind of an update going all the way back to March 18th when we closed our doors. We immediately pivoted and turned to e-services, so increasing our ebooks, e-audio, streaming video, and we just recently added digital access to the New York Times. And then we also continue from then to now helping patrons by phone and email with all of their requests and needs. We are accepting the return of physical material in our book drops, but due to the nature of the COVID-19 virus, we are quarantining items for 72 hours before they can go back in circulation. There's been extensive testing done on library material, and depending on the material, the virus can live from 1 to 6 days. So we're kind of, most of our stuff is good after 72 hours, but we're trying to be as safe as we can. Right now, Mason is open from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, Tuesday through Friday, for patrons to pick up items they've placed on hold. Ramsdell is offering curbside on Wednesdays. Patrons must order items in advance. Our ILL system is back up and running, so that means we have access to more than just what's in our libraries, which is fabulous. Our delivery times aren't as fast as they used to be because libraries are kind of opening and closing depending on the virus in their own community. But we're still getting things in every day. We're working with DPW on preparing Ramsdell to be open for in-library pickup and hope to have that up and running in the next couple of weeks. We are not able to do browsing just yet, and we still have not figured out a safe way to do the public computers. But we're working with DPW to figure out what the best way to do that is. We have placed floor markings for social distancing. We require a mask to enter. Staffing in both DPW and the library has been limited, so we've been very creative with what we can do. And there is some concern about the air quality in both of our buildings. They are older buildings, and even though Mason was renovated, we have had a lot of issues with the HVAC system this year. Programming is mainly virtual, but we have partnered with CHP to do a couple of outdoor young children's programs in the garden. That, of course, will probably end when the weather really changes. So looking forward, getting Ramsdell open for in-library pickup is our next step. And then we're looking at ways to do some limited browsing for patrons, probably just with brand new material that we can set up and then safely quarantine after people have been able to look at it. I still have 3 staff who are furloughed, and there is 1 vacancy and 1 part-time vacancy that we have not filled yet. So I'm definitely not back to full strength. But that's kind of where we are right now.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Amanda, hi, this is Lee. A few parents I've heard wondered if it'd be possible down the line to open up possibly, let's say, the children's area just for children that want to do homework as a place that they have access to Wi-Fi that maybe perhaps could use a space to sit down and do homework in the library. So I don't know if that's something that, until we get our full browsing capabilities up and running, if that's something that you might consider having a space for students to sit and work on homework.
That's been a tough one. We've looked at that quite a bit because the library has always functioned as a place for people to go after school. But right now, the big thing for us is cleaning. and keeping it safe and keeping kids with their masks on and socially distanced. The children's room is actually not all that big. And we've been using a lot of our other spaces to quarantine material. So it's something we keep looking at, but we haven't been able to find a good way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
May I add a couple of things?
Go right ahead.
One of the things Amanda forgot to brag about is there are signs all over the library lawn, both libraries, just advertising that there is Wi-Fi outside of the library. It reaches the parking lot if you want to sit in your car, and actually all the way to the parking spaces on Main Street. And every morning I see people taking advantage of that. So there is Wi-Fi. There's a big picnic table behind the library, behind the children's room, as long as the weather holds out, where kids can go if they have a computer. The other thing is that the Friends of the Library has been putting books outside, free for asking for donations, but free. And people have been A, incredibly generous, but B, taking tons of books. So that's been every weekend when rain is not in the forecast. So two other things the library has. Thank you, Amanda. You've been doing a great job with this.
Thank you to the Friends too for doing the browsing. That has made a big difference.
Thank you, Amanda.
Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Well appreciated. Okay. Mark, you have anything else?
All set. Thank you, Steve. That was the end of my updates.
Okay. Next is Jenny Rains, Kelly Granger Parsons and Associates for proposed common driveway to be located on the westerly side of Alford Road, approximately 1,000 feet southerly of the intersection with Herbert Road. Does anybody have any questions on this? Ed, you're muted, so.
Just one, which is probably irrelevant to our decision anyway, but in the conditions on application for access to public way, page 8 of our packet, it's under E, it says a culvert is not required at this location, but the map looks like it has several. Again, it probably is not relevant. I'm just curious about that.
Is there someone from Kelly Granger and Parsons on the line? If there are, please raise your hand.
Steve, this is Chris.
Oh, Chris, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Ed, that's a good comment. If the board just wants to note that in your comments to the planning board will check that.
Okay.
So do I have a motion?
This is a motion to,
It's comments to the planning board.
yeah, okay, a motion to recommend, I suppose, approval pending figuring out the culvert situation. Does that work?
Yeah, we get it. Do you have a second?
I second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Bill. Motion by Ed, second by Bill. Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call. Lee?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And aye. It's a unanimous vote. New business. Ramsdale Library Report, Rob Cullen and Janet Nelson, rethinkinglibraries.org.
So Steve, I would just ask if we could, while I'm speaking here, if you could open the mic for Rob and Janet.
Yeah.
In your packet tonight is a copy of a study for our Ramsdale Library conducted by rethinkinglibraries.org. So Rob and Janet should be both on the line, and they're here tonight to provide a brief summary of that report and then also answer any questions that you may have tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Hopefully y'all can all hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so my name is Rob Cullen, managing partner at Kimball Bowen Associates. So we're a library consulting firm. We work with hundreds of libraries across the country, coast to coast, on projects similar to this. So we were asked, actually we started this back in 2018 with an initial assessment project to just kind of figure out what the community wanted to do, what did they wanted from the Ramsdale Library. So we did a lot of community input and assessment, kind of evaluated the building and options, and came up with an initial report. Heard what we thought very loud and clear from the community, that they wanted the Ramsdell Library building to remain a library in some form, though there was a lot of openness to new models and new approaches and other uses of the space as well. But they really wanted that. They needed it. They felt that Housatonic in particular really needed that anchor of a community space to stay open and to be able to serve the community. So that was kind of the overall conclusion of that initial 2018 study. We provided some ideas around possible space usage and some varied models on how that space might be used. So late last year, 2019, we were asked to help the library move forward with doing an actual building program, which would be the next step in applying for the state's construction grant program, with the possibility of running in that. So we basically took the work we had already done in 2018, added to that, did additional assessment and reporting required by the state. That's this most recent report submitted early in the summer. And so that report, again, I think, we didn't have any new information to draw any new conclusions about the use of the library. Most of the work was completed pre-COVID. So obviously that changes some dynamics in the short term. We don't believe in our work that that's going to change the dynamics in most communities long term. But I think no one really knows for sure where things are going to be and how long that's going to take. Probably the one new big piece of kind of assessment that we did in this phase was also looking at alternative sites. The school, the former Housatonic school was part of that process, and kind of looking at its suitability for a portion of that being converted into a library. Our conclusion was that it wasn't an ideal candidate, that it would to just get a portion of it up to speed up, built up enough and refurbished enough, and with AD access that's also missing, at both locations, would be even a more expensive proposition there than it would at the current Ramsdell Library location. So now, having had conversations with Mark subsequent to the report, obviously there's other things that might be in the mix, but those things aren't, they weren't part of the purview of what we were looking at in terms of that location. But just looking at it as a potential library location, it did not. It was lacking in many ways, and certainly a more expensive facility building envelope to bring up to usable conditions. So mostly we're here to kind of field questions and address concerns or thoughts that you had about the report and about like what the future of the Ramsdell Library might pertain.
Some questions.
Really just a comment that it was a really thorough report. So this one and the last one, so thank you.
Thank you.
So the next steps?
I mean, I think from our perspective, I mean, what we're most familiar with is the next steps that you're going to have to do, is, fulfilling an actual application into the state's construction grant program. You are at some point going to have to also complete the archaeological survey. So that there was kind of an initial survey that was part of this project, which basically just found that, yes, it's a sensitive area. And so that you have to go and do the actual, ground study piece. That doesn't necessarily mean there will be anything found. There's no necessarily definitive there, but it's just in a sensitive area. So it does require that secondary step. So those would be kind of the two potentially next steps. I mean, I think the bigger question in the conversations with Mark is just what direction does the Great Barrington community want to go with library service in terms of the Ramsdell location, that building. Obviously, other than the curbside service right now during COVID, those facilities are, not open to the public. So, there's an opportunity to kind of, I think, look at what might be done and can some things be done in the short term during those closed phases, so that I think like in particular, getting a ramp access to the Ramsdale location was in our initial report kind of identified as a good first thing that would bridge the gap between a now and you're probably looking at least 5 to 8 years before you could get any construction going, get through the grant process with the state. So, getting a temporary ramp in place would be something that could be done in a more short-term order, that at a more affordable level, that would dramatically improve just access and usability of that building for the community. So I think that's something to, where does that fit in the community's priorities, which obviously with everything going on, you've got a lot of things, pulling on limited budget strings and resources. So it's not an easy decision, I'm sure.
Lee, go ahead.
Rob, I actually had a question. Thank you. I echo Ed's sentiments about such a comprehensive report, and thank you very much for all the work you've been doing.
Yeah.
Because there's been talk about doing work, let's say, on the windows and addressing some of the HVAC concerns. Being on the CPC, one of the concerns was, we didn't want to kind of piecemeal together fixes unless we had a more comprehensive, direction. And I just want to get your feedback on that. If really we want to stabilize the library and fix things such as windows and drafts, or do we want to wait till we have more of a comprehensive direction of where we are going and the steps involved in stabilizing the library?
It's always a difficult kind of decision matrix there, right? I mean, there's a lot of variables in that. I won't claim to have all of the information and all the costs and everything in front of me. What I do know and work with a lot of other libraries is that if you let some of those things, windows to a certain extent, roofing in particular, if you let those things slip, you're potentially looking at much, higher dollars down the road to fix other things. So I think that's where you got to kind of weigh those and look at, are some of those things that need to be addressed, are they more comfort issues, or are there things that could actually affect the building envelope integrity? And I don't have all that information in front of me to be able to really offer any guidance on that, but I know those are the things you would want to look at in terms of that question, Lee.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Eileen? You have your hand up, if you can unmute.
She on with 2 devices, Steve?
That's what I'm looking for, her phone number. Eileen, is that you right there?
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Yes.
I have I'm sorry about that.
No
I
problem.
have two questions. I wondered if any library trustees are present, number one. And number two, wasn't there the start of a bid to do a ramp as an emergency accessibility measure? I
Mark,
wonder what happened.
Yeah, Mark, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, if there was, that was before my time, but I can certainly look into that.
And the first question, are there any trustees on? If you want to just raise your hand.
I see Kathy Plunges.
Okay. And I see Pat.
Okay. And there was a design committee to pick a designer for a ramp. And the estimates came in enormously expensive. And then I think we decided to wait for this process.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ed, do you know, can I ask a question for that follow-up question on that, Ed?
Yeah.
Was that design, with the kind of estimates on that more of a permanent ramp, kind of something that would be more permanent, or something more temporary?
I don't know. It wasn't very temporary.
Okay.
They included landscaping, and Sean Van Duzen was the staff person on that, so he can update you.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anyone else want to speak before we move ahead? Pat, go ahead.
Just unmute myself.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to spend a few minutes on the libraries. I think Amanda's doing a really good job. I want to go back to what she did earlier in tonight's meeting. Rob he's one of the best around. He's been all over the world. So I think the report is incredibly valuable going forward. And I think that the town should use Rob as a resource as we move ahead. He's been there, done this so many times. He's a great person for us to have as a resource. So thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate the kind words.
And for our recorder, that was Patrick Hollenbeck.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Rob and Janet, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Next one is a Zoom meeting format. Lee, you had asked that we put this on the agenda. Do you want to speak to it?
Sure. I've had a few comments from residents about whether there is an option that we can provide participants the ability to see who else is participating on our select board Zoom meetings. I guess right now that ability is not offered. And so I just wanted to publicly speak about this and speak about any options we can provide the citizens with this option.
Okay. Mark, do you want to speak or you want me to speak to it?
I think I just wanted, I'll let you speak to this, Steve, but I just wanted to mention that we did reach out to Zoom and ask them if there was an option that would allow for us to show the participants who's in the meeting from the webinar format. That option doesn't exist at this time, but we have asked that if it does become available, or that they consider making that an option, and if it does become available, to please let us know so that we can utilize it. Right now, that's only an option with the less formal open meeting format.
So my experience, the school district works through CTSB and we use the open meeting format, and the town works through Zoom and uses the webinar. By far, webinar, as far as chairing a meeting, is much more effective. I can actually see the select board members. Many times I can't see school committee members. I like this format. I understand the desire to see people, but if you watch a meeting when we were in person on CTSB, you didn't see the whole audience or names of everyone. Even if you came in person, you may not have known everyone here. So I like this format. It's a board decision. While I'm thinking of it, there are 66 participants tonight, including select board members. So board, it's, if you have any comments, please give them now.
Yeah. I definitely see the value of the current format that you mentioned, Steve, and for those reasons. I'm just wondering if there's a creative way that we might be able to, whether it's snap a picture of, the list of participants that I can see right now. I have a view of everyone that's participating right now, because I know that, when you do want to speak up in the meeting, it's very helpful to know who else is listening. So I guess I'm trying to put my creative hat on to see if there is a way to do a snapshot of what I'm seeing in terms of participants, or there's a way to do a ticker tape that says who's coming on. I guess this is more of an IT question.
Can't everyone see the list of participants?
No, just us.
No.
But one of the things, just so people know, because they can't see the list, I'd say about 80% have names, but there's probably about 20% are either phone numbers or some sort of a abbreviation or something. So it's not, you still wouldn't see everyone's name.
Yeah. And I guess, Stephen, in response to your mention of, when we attend select board meetings as a member of the audience, we tend to look around and see who's there, and that might influence what we say or whether we speak up. So I can certainly see the value in residents knowing who else is participating. So I just am asking anyone that might be on that might have a creative way to for us to let others
The
know.
easiest way would be to take a screenshot and then somebody screen share it, assuming somebody can do that.
Yeah.
It means, we disappear and a list of names shows up. We do that once or twice during the meeting.
Well, I guess we could give a seat, one of our seats, and screenshot that. I mean, the list changes all the time as people, come on and off.
But the screenshot takes up the whole,
Oh,
as
it
far
does.
as I know.
Oh, we share a screen. I see.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like we could hold up, old-fashioned way. Piece of paper.
I could do that. I hadn't thought of that.
I guess that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. There's 3 people who want to speak. I'll take brief comments. So this is a good example. Eleanor Windman, I'm sorry. Just unmute yourself and.
Well, let me also remind Mark, you know how to make people disappear when they're finished speaking.
Not permanently, just from the
No.
screen. Eleanor, can you unmute yourself and speak? While you're trying to do that, Eleanor, I'm going to go to Nan Weil. Nan, unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I think as almost everyone on the board knows, I'm a really passionate advocate of citizen input, and I think that the current format is exceedingly inhospitable to citizen participation. Individuals who care about an issue or something that is on the agenda do not know which one of their colleagues or neighbors cares enough to also attend, and that may influence their willingness to speak up, particularly since they're not an elected official or someone who is used to speaking in public. So that's a big negative for me. I think that I've been on and off involved in trying to contact Zoom and find some sort of, thank you, Leaf, creative solution for this. I understand that you're nervous about people in the audience, attendees misbehaving or being rowdy, and you want to have control of the meeting. However,
Dan, can I just interrupt? It has nothing to do with that because either format, we have the mute ability.
Well, right. So in the webinar format, you do have a chat option. I think that if you're worried about people being rogue and using the chat, what do I say, in a misbehaved fashion, an illegal fashion, according to OML, do you have capabilities to control who speaks or who chats? Because
Dan, sorry to interrupt again. I'll give you more time. The chat option is turned off at our meetings.
Yes, if it was turned on, I think that you have enough respect and admiration for your colleagues to know that they would not engage in a chat conversation if they were approached by an attendee.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about that.
What are you worried about?
If the chat option is on, it's very distracting, and people tend, when they use the chat, we found out a few times, put things on the chat that they would never say publicly.
Right. Well, they can be responsible for their own lack of finesse in using the app, but I think that, as you well know, it doesn't need to be distracting because you only see the list in a drop-down menu, which you have to request by pushing a button.
Yeah, plus there's an open meeting question with the chat.
Right. So I'm saying, what happens when citizens and select board members meet each other at a cocktail party, a barbecue, and are trusted not to transgress open meeting laws by engaging in conversation with people before an issue is resolved? I mean, that happens all the time, I know, because I ask a lot of questions where your wonderful board members will say, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that because it's still, whatever the word is. What is the word, Steve?
Deliberation.
Still in deliberation, thank you.
I never moved my lips, that was goodly.
That was very good. In any event, I really think that it's a part of transparency. It's part of our government democracy that citizens be let into a meeting in equal measure, except in terms of authority, to the people that are presiding. And the chat format, Steve, would give you would present an option for those people who care who else is there to pull down the drop-down menu, and you can give them permission to speak or to chat from what you just said. And if 80% of the people have their names and 20% do not, it's really the majority of people that that everyone doesn't want to know specifically who every individual is, but they want to know if they have any colleagues, any compatriots, any co-advocates on an issue that are present that might be speaking. And if they're not there, well, then they need to speak. It's just a part of the transparent constellation of a meeting. And I feel really passionate about it. I'd love to talk to you about it for hours and hours, so we could meet outside of this format, Steve. And
Okay,
I
that'll
could
be
try
good, Dan.
and twist your arm and make you see my point of view. But it's yeah, I think it's really, really important that citizens. You've got that.
Thank you, Dan.
I just oh, sorry, just
Yeah, go
listening
ahead.
to Nan speak and looking at the squares that I see on my screen. And Nan, thank you very much. I'm absolutely in agreement with the need for as much citizen participation as we can get. And I guess I'm speaking to Mark. Would there be some way to give one of our seats up and, have someone shoot, let's say with their phone, just the list of participants and have that as one of the, town of GB seats that is kind of a rolling, a progressive listing. So basically, if I had my iPhone and I was filming just this list, I can see 68 participants. And, one of our squares was town of GB, and we could actually, use one of our Zoom seats to broadcast that. Would that be something that we could try maybe for the next meeting?
Can I?
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
I just
Hold on.
looked.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I just looked at that really quickly because I was like, oh, we're talking about it. I'll just share my screen so I can scroll through and see. Only the host of the meeting is capable of sharing a screen.
No, I'm not sharing screen, but I'm just saying someone shooting, like literally, not to share a screen, but
like holding my phone up like this.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it'd be a bit better than that, but let's say I can see Chris Rembold. He's not viewed, but let's say we use someone's space and somehow we film that column. So I guess, Mark, does that make sense to you? Because you probably see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's a trial basis, but it's just, trying to accommodate.
You could assign a co-host to take up that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
square.
okay.
For the town, so.
I'd be happy to work with Amy to see if we can come up with a solution to provide an attendee list.
Thank you.
Okay, Michelle.
Hi.
Michelle, there's a ton of feedback there.
I know. I can't do it. What about now?
I think she's calling from the space shuttle.
Okay, Michelle, I'm gonna let you try to fix that while I go to Heather Bello. Heather, you can speak.
Hi, could you just give us a clear statement about why you don't want to put the names up so that I can explain to readers? I just need a really clear idea of why this is.
Okay,
Because
so you've already misspoken on that, Heather. It's not we don't want to put the names up. There are two formats. One is webinar, one is open meeting. The webinar format, the select board, similar to an in-public meeting, is front and center, and so isn't the staff. The open meeting format, it's pages and pages of people, and the select board and the staff may be on page 3, they may be on page 1. With the open meeting format, you have the list of people. With a webinar, the list isn't available. So that, It's just a matter of what Zoom is capable of and what Zoom isn't capable of.
I understand. I'm only raising this because a lot of the other meetings that I'm covering do show the lists. So that's why I'm asking.
Right, and they're in the open meeting format. And it's as a chair, I don't have, although Nan, I think thinks I feel extremely strong about one or the other. I like the webinar better. It's much easier to control a meeting. I know at the school committee, because of CTSB, we use the open meeting. And there have been times that I have missed school committee members who've wanted to speak because they're not in front of me. They're on like the 4th page. So it's just a matter of which format we like better.
Okay, and so you'll decide what format you're gonna
Yes, we will.
settle on, and you'll let us know what the reason
Of course.
is.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Steve, can I ask you a question on that?
Of course.
If the select board are the first ones that join the meeting, would we be lined up? Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then
Around.
oh, we always move around. So it's not whoever signs up first will be always at the first 5 spaces.
Right.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I think everybody's view is different. So right now, I'm right above you. Is that how you see it?
No, you're to my left.
Right. So it's
Well, it's different views. Yeah, I mean, I can pick. Yeah.
Michelle, did you straighten out your technological problems?
Can you hear me? No.
No, we're still. Eleanor Wyndham?
Yeah, it's actually Claudia, Steve.
Oh, hi, Claudia.
Claudia Shapiro.
Hi, Claudia.
The first airport meeting, you could see the participants. The second meeting, before it happened, a email went out that the format had changed and we were no longer going to be able to see the participants. I called the open meeting law attorney general. They seemed to feel or felt that it was a very good question. And the town of Great Barrington should be calling the Attorney General Open Meeting Law Violation Department to find out how to address this issue. You should be working with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Mark, do you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to just say that we haven't used the open meeting format since we resumed meetings back in April. So I don't think that we were using the open meeting format at all during these airport hearings.
We did do one. I don't know if it was the airport or not.
Yeah, there was one problem that Amy had, and we ended up in the open format.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that must have been a subscription issue.
We have checked with the open meeting law office, haven't we?
I did check the open meeting law because this question of whether the webinar format meets the open meeting law has come up. A few people have questioned that. I've not been able to find anything that would substantiate the claim that this webinar format is a violation of the OML.
Claudia, very quickly, because I want to move ahead.
Please call the Attorney General open meeting, please. Thank you.
Thank
Just
you,
call
Claudia.
them, please, and talk with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're not going to solve this tonight. We'll see what we can come up with for the next meeting to put some sort of see if we can do something. I won't promise anything. And we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting also. Unless the board feels very strongly now that they want to vote, and I have no problem with that. I'm seeing a lot of no's, so we'll move ahead. Music on Main Street.
Yeah. So, Mark, were you going to clear, not that I don't want to look at people, were you going to clear some of the people who are no, so we all get bigger? So Music on Main Street, this is sort of I'm looking for a nod of heads. I've been working with Robin Helfand of Robin's Candy just to try to come up with ideas to continue attracting people outdoors in downtown Great Barrington when the Railroad Street experiment is over. And what we're sort of putting something together, but we want the town to buy into it. And by buy-in, I don't mean with money, except in minor ways out of a budget Mark already has at his discretion, like PR and things like that. But we want to bring people on one Saturday a month, bring entertainment. It's not necessarily music or all music, to various spots downtown. It's kind of modeled on I think it was Jazz on the Move or something like that in Lenox, the Jazz. Where in various spots downtown, there'll be music or some other entertainment between 1 and 4 o'clock on a Saturday, and people will move around just to make it more lively. So if really, unless you think this needs a formal vote, if we could just nod and say, Mark can jump on this to the extent he feels it's reasonable. If permits or licenses are needed, which is part of what we want the town for to help with that, they'll all be gotten legally.
What's the timeline for this, Ed? Is this?
So there will be one a month starting November, probably.
Oh, so it's going to go through the winter?
So yeah, I think November, maybe the first one is replacing the holiday stroll, which isn't going to happen. So something, on that date. And then it's usually aimed for a holiday weekend if we can find one. And we're going to see. We're going to see if we can get somebody to play the guitar when it's 15 degrees out. That could be difficult. Some of it could be inside of empty stores with speakers outside. Again, we're just experimenting with it. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce and anybody else who wants to get involved. We're going to write immediately. As soon as we get a nod, we're going to write to all of the downtown stores to see who wants to be part of it.
My only concern, Ed, would be that the musicians are distanced enough. If they're singing or horn playing, they have to be far enough away that people aren't going to be walking in front of them.
Right.
That's all. I like the idea, though.
So, Ed, I'm not much of a nod person, so a motion, I think, will carry more weight.
Okay. Should this be my motion?
No, Lee's got her hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, no, and Ed, I'd like to maybe run this by you or work with you. There is a gentleman in Great Barrington that has proposed doing something starting next year, more of a festival. So I think, maybe with you and Robin, this could be worked into what.
Okay. And yeah, one of the things once this is up and running, we figure out the details. At some point, we want to start thinking, and this is where we'll definitely bring in town staff. We want to start thinking about next spring and summer, because it was, whether or not we're all hugging and kissing each other, it's a pretty big success, the Railroad Street thing.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
So I guess I'd like to make a motion that the select board endorse what's tentatively called Music on Main Street. And
it's good. I copyrighted that.
Wasn't that your idea?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. If you could just keep us,
Yeah, I'll report back to you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah. So I have a second by Lee, a motion by Ed. Any other discussion?
I would just like to say that as we continue, and I'm sure that you guys will be doing this, but I'm just going to say it out loud, as we continue along into the winter and the pandemic, that you're just consistently checking in with Rebecca and the health agents about what you're doing. I know you're going to, but I'm just saying it out loud, that we just continue to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Right. We have a tentative Halloween plan, depending on the outcome of our discussion tonight, which we've already run past her. So yeah.
Okay. Roll call vote. Lee?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Claudio Shapiro, open meeting law complaint number 2. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to move that we accept Mark's letter of response and have him send it out to Claudia.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
I've recused myself from these as they're involved in the airport, so.
I'll second.
So it's second by Ed, a motion by Bill. Any discussion? So it's a roll call vote. Lee?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And aye. It's unanimous. Okay, old business. Halloween trick or treat. Mark? Or Kate?
Do you want me to get started, Kate?
Sure.
Okay, so in your packet tonight, you should have an executive summary from our health agent, Rebecca, on suggestions for a safe Halloween trick-or-treat evening in 2020 during a pandemic. I will tell you that the Berkshire managers will be meeting tomorrow morning. They're proposing that we consider a countywide approach to some trick-or-treating event so that we don't have parents bouncing from town to town, taking advantage of different hours in different towns and different events to streamline it so we're all doing the same thing at the same time. So that said, I don't have a specific recommendation for you tonight, and I'll just turn it back over to the board.
Okay.
So,
Lee?
well, I have something to say, but if Kate wants to.
No, go ahead.
So, I've been kind of doing an informal poll, and I live on the Hill, which is one of the areas that have the biggest influx of trick-or-treaters. And I have 3 children myself, and I'm mindful of the increase in COVID cases that is currently happening in Berkshire County. And what I would ask the board to consider is not having Halloween this year. I'm very, very mindful of the effects of COVID, and I'm very hesitant about opening.
Lee, you're cutting out, so we're missing what you're telling us.
Oh, am I cutting out for anyone else?
No.
Oh, okay. So I'm just hesitant about moving forward with the traditional trick-or-treating that is happening in Great Barrington, and I would ask the select board to consider an alternative low-risk activity rather than continuing with our traditional Halloween trick-or-treating. So that's my feelings.
Anyone else?
I sort of think we ought to give Mark the authority to meet with this group tomorrow and see what they say and come up with a unified. What I like about Rebecca's suggestions is it sort of says, okay, if you are going to trick or treat, these are the ways to do it more safely. People always have the option of turning off their lights and not participating, but I feel like it is a good idea to do it, county or region wide. And maybe we give Mark the authority to walk into that meeting using his judgment and have they all come on the same page. Plus, then, if there is no trick-or-treating, he's the Grinch, not us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind being a Grinch, but I just feel that, in light of everything and in light of the increase in cases in Berkshire County, I think, my recommendation would be to do something that is lower risk than traditional activities. But Mark, if, I'd be willing to defer and hear what the committee says tomorrow.
So do I have a motion?
Well, let me try it then. Let me make a motion that we.
I keep freezing. I keep losing everybody. I don't know if you guys can hear me right now. I have some things I would like to say, but I don't know how to say them in this current state.
Can you call in?
No, we can hear you. You're not. Your picture's freezing, but your voice isn't.
Oh, wait right there.
But Steve, the meeting that's happening tomorrow, or Ed, what is that exactly when you say it's a regional?
Oh, I don't know. It's just what Mark just said.
It's a Berkshire managers meeting. It's I think managers from Southern Berkshire.
So that I'm on town Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
Is that a town iPad?
It's mine.
Do you have cellular service?
Not
So
on my iPad. I'm town hall guest.
Oh. Should we mute her? Can we mute Kate?
I already have.
Okay. So depending on the meeting, the outcome of tomorrow, when would we hear of the?
Well, we would have to turn the decision over to Mark if we're going to do that, which I'm not against because we don't meet again to the end of the month. It would be too late. We have to let parents know what we're doing sooner than later.
So the board is.
I'm gonna join the meeting from my phone instead. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have no idea what's happening right now. And I have cellular data, so hopefully it should be better. So I'm gonna try that, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
So look for me with a raised hand.
I will.
While we're waiting for Kate, is there anyone that feels?
Yeah, I'd be inclined to. Really to allow it, but really stress the suggestions and restrictions. Putting a table between, if you are answering the door, putting a table between you with candy on it, already prepackaged, or so people aren't digging into a bowl. Turning off lights if you're not comfortable. Kids going in, the their family groups,
Yeah.
and
Taking to their own
perhaps
neighborhood.
saying, don't go to 100 houses this year.
Yeah.
Stick to your neighborhood and go to a few houses.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my worry is just, kids congregating and a lot of the older kids congregating. And I feel that, if we could offer an alternative solution, whether it's, the reverse parade that Kate mentioned, or, smaller pods of close family and friends. I just, I worry that since some other towns might be not having their Halloween this year, that the Hill in particular is going to attract, large gatherings of kids on the street. And, although people might turn off their lights, we're still, inviting large gatherings that we're, unable to monitor. So,
yeah, I guess that's why I'm suggesting we let Mark meet with the other towns. But Kate?
Kate, go ahead and.
So it sounds like from what I'm catching that I missed, that the reverse parade idea that I had suggested has been mentioned. I have also discussed with Mark a couple other plans that are kind of almost more like a truck day type event, where kids would come based on their age and go to a certain vehicle based on their last name. So the contact was incredibly minimal. I think there are other options that we can explore as well. I think one of the things about allowing Mark to join this meeting tomorrow before we make a decision is recognizing the fact that we get to see what other towns are doing. I think it is really hard as a parent of two very young children who have had a really hard year. They've had their birthdays. I mean, all of us have, obviously, but our kids have been such troopers through all of this. And I don't feel like trick-or-treating regular is necessarily the right thing to do. I don't think it's fair to the Hill. I don't think it's fair to Housatonic. I don't think it's fair to the east side, out to the East Mountain neighborhood, any of the neighborhoods that have high traffic for trick-or-treating. I don't think trying to do it in a normal way, if we are the only town that's going to do it, is a safe thing to do. But I do think that to just say we're going to cancel Halloween and not attempt anything else is really, really sad. And it's really, really hard. And it's very unsupportive of our community. As silly as trick-or-treating and Halloween may seem to a lot of people, it's a really special thing for little kids, and they have gone through so much. So I really push to allow Mark to attend this meeting, hear what all their towns are thinking and planning on doing, and then allowing him to make the right decision or if we really need to have an emergency meeting to discuss what we want to do. Because I don't think it's right for us to say we're not going to do it before we hear what everybody else is going to do.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, I wasn't saying that just blanket cancel it. I was saying that, to look into lower, risk activities. And depending on how this meeting goes tomorrow, I guess my concern is getting the word out and how the timing will be, how the timing will be, since we won't be having a select board meeting until, I guess, very, very close to Halloween. So.
We may have an executive session. We'll talk about that. But so do I have a motion of some sort so we can just.
Yeah, I think this is what we're all saying. So let me make a motion that pending the outcome of a meeting Mark attends with other town administrators and town managers, we let Mark make a decision about what is and is not allowed on Halloween.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
I think the other thing that Mark and I discussed earlier today while we were discussing Halloween, just quickly, was also if we did try to do some alternative thing, it's going to require volunteers and the help of other organizations or people throughout town to make it happen. And so I know we discussed already trying to reach out to the Rotary and the Chamber to see if they might be able to drum up some help in getting things to happen. So I think that other activities might take a lot more coordinating, but hopefully as the community, it's something we can pull around if that's the direction we go in.
Are you comfortable with that, Mark?
Yes.
So I have a motion by Ed, a second by Bill. I think we're ready to vote. So, Lee,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I. Lee, you seem a little uncomfortable. Is there anything else?
No,
you
I
want to
just, I feel like there's been communications going on back and forth between Kate and Mark that I was not aware of. So that's my question. You know, not that I have anything against it. I just didn't know information was being conveyed that I wasn't aware of. So I'll catch up after the meeting.
Yeah, if I can just speak to that quickly, the decision to have a Zoom meeting tomorrow with the Berkshire managers came up very late today. It wasn't something that was planned in advance, but I think we'll be better informed tomorrow after that meeting happens, and I'd be happy to share that information, of course, with the board, and we'll do everything we can to get the word out to families and parents in town.
Yeah, it would be a disaster if Great Barrington was the only town around having Halloween.
Well, I just want to make sure that the board is aware of the direction we're going. And if Kate's part of a conversation, I'd like to be part of that too.
Oh, there's also the open meeting law dilemma. So we have to be a little careful. One member of the board can talk to Mark, 3 members can't, not all at once at least. So we will, if we have to, we'll have a special meeting if it comes up to that. I don't disagree.
Okay. I had brought this up weeks ago with Mark, and I've been brainstorming with other parents because my heart breaks for our kids, our little kids and our big kids. And so I've just been trying to think of what we can do.
Okay. Moving ahead. We have a select board liaison list. We have 2 choices. We can quickly go over it tonight. And the liaison list is board members who are assigned or volunteered to be on liaison to certain boards and certain groups. So there's 2 questions. We need to update the list if we're going to continue it. And do we want to continue the liaison? We haven't updated it in over a year, well over a year. So how's the board feel? Do we want to continue the liaison list or scrap it? And if we do, we can update it very quickly tonight.
We asked Mark if it has been, helpful to him to have us as liaisons, or if it seems more cumbersome. I don't know. I guess that would be another part of it, is I think we originally started really pushing to have this done to support our previous town manager. And I guess I'm just curious to see if it feels like it is supportive or fallen aside or any of these things.
Mark?
To be perfectly honest, I wasn't even aware that we had a liaison system until recently, only because this played out before I started here in Great Barrington. I was aware that certain members played certain roles as liaisons to particular boards and committees, and with departments, I wasn't aware that it was so formally put together in a spreadsheet, because I think this was done in 2018. So I think it certainly has value, and I'd be happy to support it if the board feels that that this is maybe overkill. I'd be happy to support that as well. I know that's not a very clear answer, but I'd be happy with either approach. So.
I haven't done any actual liaising with any of the departments. And as for the boards and committees, if I'm at a meeting, they look up, they see there's a select board member there, they'll ask a question. So I don't know that we need to do it formally. I think if any of us have an interest in anything in a department, we let Mark know and he'll keep us in the loop, but he sort of keeps us all in the loop anyway.
Yeah.
I'm
comfortable doing away with it.
I'd like one less thing on my plate to feel guilty about falling behind on.
It's a question for Lee, who I don't think you're on it, right? Because
no, she's not.
But we did redo it when Lee started, I believe, because I know that you are the CPC person, so this might not be the most updated list.
Yeah, I took Dan's place, but aside from that.
So I'm not hearing any great hue and crying that we need this list. I think it served its purpose at the time. If we need to go back to it, we'll go back to it. Lee will stay the CPC. We have representatives to different boards, and that won't change. For one I can think of immediately, CPC, Economic Development may be another one, which is Ed. Those liaisons will stay because we have a seat at the table on those boards. That doesn't change. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Lee, you're okay with that?
I am, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the next, let me just get my calendar up. The next one is Great Barrington Housing Authority complaint by Eileen Mooney, town manager update on the status. Go ahead, Mark, did you want to just weigh in?
I guess I could just briefly update the board here on this. I did send out a confidential packet to the board, and on the advice of our attorney, of course, it was confidential because this is still considered a personnel matter. So my recommendation to the board for your next step on this process would be to schedule an executive session for a date and time that will work for the board.
So assuming the board's going to go along with that, I'll throw out a few dates, and we'll see if we can come up with a date to do this. 2 weeks from tonight, the 19th, a Monday, our traditional night. We hate to break with tradition.
Free.
Kate, you're muted, so I didn't hear you.
Yes, I realized that. Next Monday, you said?
No, the 19th. Next Monday's Columbus Indigenous Peoples Day. So it's the 19th.
Okay. Steve, I might have a hearing to go in Lee for my work that night.
Okay, so we'll skip that night. How about the, I have a busy month. How about the 28th, a Wednesday night? I want to give enough time for people who need to be there.
That works for me.
My husband's turning 40.
I thought that was the 29th.
But there's a birthday.
This is going to take longer.
He's turning the 29th, but I know that he's going to need the whole week.
Oh. How about November?
I can do the 29th.
How about
or
November
28th,
2nd?
I'm sorry.
Wait,
I can be there.
Isn't the 29th proposed meeting with the planning board?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Can you do the 28th, Kate?
No, that's what she was
Oh, I thought
saying.
you said she could. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing the
He did
28th?
the 28th. I can do the 28th, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lee. I misunderstood Kate with her going
I
in
can
and
do it.
out.
Yeah.
So that was a yes, Kate, on the 28th? Okay. Everyone can do the 28th?
Yes.
Let's just pick one more night, just in case our lawyer can't make it or some of the other participants can't. We'll give them two choices. How about November 2nd, which is a Monday?
Sure.
Yes.
6 o'clock for both.
Yeah, that'd be fine. So it's either going to be October 28th or November 2nd. Hopefully those dates. Do I have a motion, Ed?
In 1 second, what was the second date?
November 2nd.
6 p.m. Okay. Pursuant to the board's authority under General Law, Chapter 121B, Section 6, I move the Select Board hold an executive session under Purpose 1 on Monday, October 26th, with prior notification in writing to Mr. Mercer as required by law.
28th, Wednesday the 28th.
Whoops. Yes.
And what about November 2nd?
With a alternate date of November 2nd. Can we do that, Mark, on this type of thing?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, I'll second it.
So just so everyone's clear, Wednesday, October 28th, an alternate date of Monday, November 2nd. So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Lee, roll call.
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I. It's unanimous. Okay, I will add that to my calendar. Special permit application from Berkshire Aviation Enterprises, Inc. for an aviation field in an R4 zone at 70 Egremont Plain Road, Great Barrington, for sections 3.1.4E1 and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw, continued from August 10th, August 24th, September 14th, September 21st, 2020. Do I have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Lee,
Aye.
Kate.
Peace. I'm out.
That's right. Thank you. You're right.
Yep.
See you later. Bill,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I. So it's unanimous. So let me just go over what tonight's hearing is going to be. I don't anticipate any public comment being taken tonight. We will hear from our attorney, David Dineski, concerning some questions that we had asked, some finer points that we needed clarification on. I will ask for the airport's attorney, Dennis Egan, to give any comments that he may want to make. The select board then will ask questions and start open discussion. At the end of it, it is my hope to close the public hearing. And at our next meeting, which is at the end of October, we will start to discuss the findings of fact. So is everyone clear and okay with that?
Yes.
Seeing everyone is, David, would you like to lead off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. There were two, I think, basic questions that we were left with or that were raised at the last session on September 21. The first were the criteria for considering this special permit application. And I will essentially summarize the elements that I included in the memorandum to the board of October 2nd. This is a special permit application. It arises under the zoning bylaws table of uses and particularly section 7.2 of the bylaw that speaks to aviation fields. So as a special permit application, it's subject to all of the sort of standard, if you will, criteria that are in subsection 10.4.2 of the zoning bylaw. And just for record purposes, that essentially directs that the special permit granting authority make a written determination that the adverse effects of the proposed use will not outweigh its beneficial impacts to the town or the neighborhood in view of the particular characteristics of the site and of the proposal in relation to that site. And then there are 6 elements that the special permit granting authority, whatever it may be, in this instance, the select board, is to consider in making the determination. And those include the social, economic, or community needs which are served by the proposal, traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading, adequacy of utilities and other public services, neighborhood character and social structures, impacts on the natural environment, and potential fiscal impacts, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. We then have the section 7.2 language for an aviation field, which has a subheading of requirements. And the standard that's stated in that subsection is that the airfield shall be so located that it is not likely to become objectionable to adjoining and nearby property because of noise, traffic, or other objectionable condition. So the issue that arises, and I use the word hybrid to describe the situation at the last session, is how to apply that bylaw language in the circumstance that we have where the airport and the use already exist and have existed for a number of years. And just briefly, the statement that I've made and the opinion that I've given to the board is that this language should be applied so as to measure whether whatever is proposed to be added to the existing operation, such as the hangars, for example, would result in the operation of the airport becoming more objectionable, quote unquote, than at present. So in other words, taking the existing condition as a baseline, if you will, and applying the criteria to what is proposed to be added. A second question that was raised by the board is that where this property is located in the Water Quality Protection Overlay District, how do the provisions of that section of the zoning bylaw, section 9.2, apply? And there is a subsection which specifies a number of uses that require a special permit. The subsection 9.2.2 language says that the overlay district provisions shall apply to all new construction, reconstruction, or expansion of existing buildings and new or expanded uses. And that listing of special permit uses, which is in section 9.2.12, includes a description of activities that involve the handling of toxic or hazardous materials in quantities greater than those associated with normal household use. And for purposes of this overlay district, toxic or hazardous materials include at least petroleum products and synthetic organic chemicals, things that I think it's accepted by applicant and others will exist at this airport use. And so therefore, at the airport, the handling of those materials is necessarily going to exceed the quantity greater than that associated with normal household use. So to summarize my opinion from the memorandum, the application of the overlay district provisions, in my view, is that a special permit will be required if either A, construction of the hangar buildings or other proposed facilities, or the use of the constructed buildings or facilities will include handling of toxic or hazardous materials, or B, that the uses to be conducted within the hangars or on or in the other facilities that are proposed to be constructed will increase the level of handling of toxic or hazardous materials that already exists on the property. So a brief comment, if the board does find that based on the facts presented, either of those two situations that I just described will apply, it may include as a condition of any special permit for an airfield that it may choose to grant, a requirement that the applicant also obtain a water quality protection overlay district special permit under that subsection 9.2.12.2. If the board does not find that as proposed, either of those two elements will be triggered, then it could also include, and could include anyway, a general condition that if in the future the use rises to meet any of those triggers, that a special permit would be required for this particular property under the overlay district provisions. And that essentially is the essence of what I've provided to the board.
Thank you, David. Do board members have any questions of David before I recognize Dennis? Lee, go ahead.
Thank you, David. I had a question about one of the first items that you mentioned, 9.2.2, and it mentioned, I'm just getting my writing correct, that if the expansion could be deemed as troublesome, I guess my question is, you talked about the hangars, but you didn't talk about the unknown factor of what an expansion might trigger in the future. So if you take away the hangars, could you speak to, how the bylaw would be addressed with 9.2.2 that you mentioned? Because you mentioned the hangars, but you didn't mention that any possible expansion, how that could affect, the neighborhood, for example, and things like that.
I mentioned the hangars in particular because that seemed to be the most direct element that involved construction, particularly the hangar buildings. And so I focused on whether that construction or what would happen within that construction would involve the handling of either toxic or hazardous materials. But the second element would be whether the use on the property as it's proposed in this application and as described in the application and as presented to the board is going to involve handling of those materials above the current level. So I think that's what gets to the sort of future, whether what is being described as the use that's proposed to be specially permitted would increase the level of handling of those materials beyond what is currently in existence.
So I guess I'm still unclear about what possible ramifications if it becomes an aviation field. So, in addition to the hangars, if there's any factors that we might not know of right now that might come into play. So I understand the issue with hangars, but there's other potential elements with the granting of the special permit that comes with an aviation field that we might not be aware of. So my question is to that more so than the hangars.
The elements of the use would be what is known to exist by the knowledge of the town, the knowledge of the board, what's been described as being proposed in both the application and the representations of the applicant. And anything that might flow from that or be implicated by that is something that the board could consider and inquire about if it feels that it needs additional information. I don't think it's the case that we can have a sort of future unknown category, if you will, but certainly anything that's going to trigger that handling of toxic or hazardous materials, whether it's found to exist as the airport is presently proposed under the special permit application, or if in the future it's determined to exist, then in my view, that overlay district special permit requirement would kick in.
I think I have a question. So that if we were to decide, or if there was no expansion, if nothing were going to change, the 9.2.12 does not apply. Number 2, right?
If we find that there's that neither in the construction or the use of what's constructed or the use of the property doesn't involve anything new to be brief with respect to those materials at this point in time anyway, in my view, it wouldn't apply. It doesn't preclude it from possibly applying in the future.
So you can do this quickly, and because again, I've been wrong about this bylaw before. But when it says the following uses and activities are permitted only upon the issuance of a special permit, and then it says handling more than household use, why is that not applied to what they're already doing?
I've approached this in the way that I also approached section 7.2 to account for the fact that there's already activity there. And I guess in a shorthand way to say, to make a practical application of the bylaw so that we recognize both in law and fact what currently exists, but anything that's new, also following the language in 9.2.2 that new construction or expansion would trigger the applicability of the overlay district.
So then that leads to my second question, which is if we're not looking at current conditions when weighing the impact, can we look at current conditions when weighing the benefits? That was brought up by one of the opponents, that all of the benefits listed are not the hangars, not the expansion, but what they currently do. They currently have 12 employees. They currently provide a place to land airplanes. We should ignore all of that because it's existing.
I would say that the focus of the evaluation is based on, or should derive from, what is proposed to be new.
Okay.
So if we use the baseline, what currently exists, and because the nature of the expansion, it's going to increase. So that kind of, does that answer the question? I mean, because basically if we're using that as a baseline,
that's part of our judgment.
It's not going, okay. All right.
I have a question on conditions. I understand that we can limit the number, we can't limit the number of aircraft that are housed there, or can we?
That I would not take to be a land use type condition. And as presented, the applicant is describing a certain number of aircraft, and that's certainly something that the board could inquire about, and perhaps with input from the applicant, you could establish a number if the applicant's willing to accept that.
Could that be overruled by the, whatever the Federal Aviation?
Yeah, it's actually, that was specifically answered by DOT. Can the town regulate the number of planes based at the airport? No.
And so the question's going to be whether you have an applicant who would entertain that, bearing in mind that if it were simply a one-sided equation, if you will, that there is a higher authority.
But if the applicant accepted that condition, it couldn't be overruled by...
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I think unless that higher authority were invoked, and I would not take it to be the case that that would happen unless there's a federal issue that arises.
That's not clear to me.
It's not the case that it's absolutely permissible. I'm simply saying that if the applicant's representing that this is what we're going to do, these are the numbers, and we would accept the condition, I certainly wouldn't say to the board to just ignore that, but it would be done in light of the fact that there is superior regulatory authority that could later come into play. So I wouldn't say that it's an absolute protection, but it could be a period of time protection and perhaps a substantial period of time.
So I had a follow-up question. So you mentioned superior regulatory authority, and that's one of my concerns is, if a special permit is granted for the aviation field, what is that opening us up to, with this superior regulating authority? I still don't feel quite comfortable, what control that are we giving up as a municipality with the special permit if it was granted? So I know you've mentioned, superior regulatory authority, but what does that actually mean? What could we be giving up as a municipality if this goes ahead?
I'm not sure that I would say that if a special permit is issued, that the town is giving up regulatory authority, because that federal authority is going to exist whether this use is classified as a specially permitted use or as it presently exists, represented as a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Okay, but there must be something that must be some benefit that they would be getting with the granting of the special permit.
I would probably defer to the applicant's counsel on that, because the representation is that we, the airport, are asking you to regulate us. And so I'm not in a position to say that special permit status is better for them than the current status they have. And I'm taking it to be the representation that they are asking to be regulated in a way that they currently aren't, or at least is different from the way they are currently regulated. And the reference has been made that if they're looking to make an alteration or extension, that comes under the jurisdiction of the Zoning Board of Appeals by way of an application to alter it or extend a non-conforming use. And there is some flexibility under zoning law for non-conforming uses. If a special permit for this use were granted, that status would no longer exist, in my view.
So when I did ask this question, I think to Jim Scalise over SK Design, why are they going to the select board rather than going to the second option, let's say, of going before the zoning board of appeals for an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use? I think the answer was transparency, but I feel like, I guess I don't really understand the difference coming to the select board versus the zoning board of appeals if it's just all about hangers, because it sounds like they're going to have to go through this anyways.
Let me ask Dennis if he wants to give a brief clarification on that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've answered this several times in writing, and I'm happy to answer it again because I think it's vitally important that each member of the board understand exactly what this application does. The reason why this is before the select board is because as a pre-existing non-conforming use, any expansion of that pre-existing non-conforming use, including minor alterations of existing footprints, require the applicant to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit. Historically, that has meant, even with respect to minor alterations, we have hearings, we have appeals, we have increased costs to both the applicant and the town. And at the end of the day, what we have is a piecemeal approach to this issue. So as I've stated, the reason why we are going before this board for a special application is to take a thoughtful approach to this. The issue of what are we giving up, we need to be clear. This is a use issue only. And to make this use conforming, this use is already in existence. So the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division has jurisdiction over this airport, whether or not it is a pre-existing non-conforming use or it is a conforming use. All that the select board is being asked to do is make it a conforming use subject to special conditions. The reason why this will not, questions have been raised by opponents. We are against uncontrolled expansion of the airport. That uncontrolled expansion cannot happen for several reasons as set forth in my submission. First and foremost, it cannot happen as a result of the select board making this use conforming, because this select board only controls the use, and only those uses that are allowed in the zoning district can happen. For example, there can never be a restaurant at this location. There can never be a retail store at this location because those uses are not allowed in the underlying zoning district. If the applicant wanted either of those uses, it would have to go before town meeting with a warrant article to amend current zoning. So as to the fear of a restaurant or a retail store, that cannot currently exist as the zoning use table exists. We cannot expand the types of aircraft that land or take off here because we are confined by the length of the runway. We can't expand the runway because we do not own the land to the west or to the east. We cannot construct additional structurals because under the Water Quality Protection Overlay District, you can only have 10% lot coverage. If these hangars are approved, we will be at 9.4%. And so essentially what's left is 0.6, and that's essentially a half acre of improvement. If this board wanted to condition this permit to say that after these hangars are constructed, there is no additional construction of new unattached buildings without coming back before us, the applicant would gladly submit to those. So beyond that 0.6%, we're at 9.4 if the hangars are approved, and we're bumping up against a 10% maximum. Anything above that 10% maximum would require us to come back for a special permit. Furthermore, and if you look at the correspondence, the email from Ms. Garcia at the Aeronautics Division to Mr. Rembold dated 9/29/2020, she runs down, Mr. Rembold presents a number of questions that have been asked by this board. If we grant the permit, does that obligate the airport to come into compliance with Department of Transportation or FAA regs? And the answer is, if the town grants a permit, the private airport would be obligated to comply with the local zoning bylaws as to use. So making the use conforming doesn't grant any special benefit onto this applicant other than making it conforming, which means that we can make minor adjustments, we can do maintenance, we can keep the property updated without having to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for every expansion of that pre-existing non-conforming use. With all due respect, it's the question is not whether the applicant should be before the Select Board or before the Zoning Board of Appeals. The applicant has both avenues. The applicant has chosen this avenue for the reasons set forth, and therefore this board's obligation is to consider the application in light of, in town council's view, 10.4.2 of the zoning bylaw, and in town council's view, 7.2.1.2 as set forth by town council, both of which stand for the proposition that the question is not, is the airport objectionable as currently constituted? The airport exists. Pre-existing non-conforming use has existed since 1931 and will always exist. And so that use is going to happen whether or not this application is granted, if the permit is granted or not. The question before the board, if you take 7.2.1.2 as suggested by your council, is that hangar, is the construction of the hangar, does that make this airport more objectionable than as already exists? And the applicant's answer to that is no, for the simple reason that it's not going to increase activity at that airport. There's a couple of factual inaccuracies that I just want to address. One is that the applicant has only spoken to the benefits of this airport as currently exists, and that is factually inaccurate. We have repeatedly spoke to the increased tax revenue as a result of these hangars being built. Counsel for the opponents has suggested that that increase is de minimis. Opponents have suggested that it is insignificant as it relates to a cannabis operation. The applicant would suggest to you that it is not de minimis by any measure or means, but that is the up to the select board to determine. But again, it is not factually accurate that the only benefits that the applicant has pointed to were currently existing. And then the other is that we have repeatedly stated that building these hangars does not cause increased air traffic at that airport. It is simply a place to park aircraft that are currently located at the airport. Owners have asked repeatedly that they be allowed to house their airplanes, A, indoors, and B, indoors and with their own private location. So to the extent activity at the airport increases, as Mr. Scalise has pointed out, previously that increased activity at most will track the Department of Transportation's Aeronautics Division's 1% increase, and historically has. So it is not a cause and effect that if you build these hangars, you're going to increase air traffic at the airport. And so the answer to that question is no, but the question is a little misguided in as much as the town can't regulate air traffic now. It can't regulate hours of operations, all as set forth in Ms. Garcia's email to Mr. Remble, again dated September 29th, 2020. So the informational packet that was put out, and I think all of you have, speaks to many of these questions, but I absolutely respectfully request that the board not take up this issue as it relates to the 6 criteria and then the added criteria, as town council argues 7.2.1.2, that this board not take this application up until the members have their questions adequately answered from the perspective of fear of the unknown, that no one can really tell us what those unknowns are. Those unknowns that we've heard so far is a restaurant use, can't have it. A retail store, can't have it. Larger planes, can't have it because the runway is not long enough. More planes, if more planes wanted to land at Great Barrington Airport, they would be landing now. The construction of these hangars does not increase takeoff or landings. It just doesn't. It never will. And to suggest that it does is unfounded, and it's misleading.
So may I clarify that I was not saying, or I'm not sure you were quoting me, that you showed no benefit to the future. I'm saying your application is filled with talking about benefits that you currently bring. And I was wondering, can we consider that when we're weighing the costs and the benefits if we can't consider the costs that you currently bring, the noise, the things people have been complaining about? So I will acknowledge the one that you mentioned is there. But so that was my question, is when we look at 10.4, are we looking at just, both for positives and negatives, which I think the answer is yes, we are looking just at new things. So a significant amount of what you put in your application is not for us to consider. Not the 12 employees. The other thing I would ask is an event venue something that's allowed by right in that zone? Because the airport has become an event venue, and I know other people who wanted to do events in that zone have come for a special permit, which the airport hasn't. The fear being, if you can do that without a special permit and call it ancillary to being an airport, why isn't a restaurant?
The restaurant is specifically prohibited in that district. In fact, like I said, it would require an amendment of the zoning bylaw to allow it. Those issues, like an event, the very easy way to make sure that specific things don't happen, and that is to add a reasonable condition to the permit. That's the argument that we've made, that the applicant has made, and I think it's maybe been viewed as an attorney trying to make a slick argument. It's not. All of the objections to the airport are some fear of the unknown, and what I'm saying is, to the extent there are fears and considerations that either the board has or opponents have, reasonable restrictions can be put on these permits. That's why they're called special permit.
The fear of what you want to do is the fear of the unknown, but most of the objections that have come up are the fear of what's already going on.
Right. That's a very good point. And as town council pointed out, those happen. And this application has to be considered in light of what's currently there, which is there, and whether the construction of these hangars will make what's currently there any more objectionable. And I would submit to you that the answer to that is clearly no, as evidenced by the opponent's attorney's own writing, which say that the objections were with respect to noise, traffic, safety, and water protection, And none of the objections that I've been able to see have anything to do with the actual construction of hangars. That's a general design standard issue that is pending. The planning board would take up that issue if and when the special permit is granted. If I may speak to the water quality.
Yeah, let's let Bill ask his question first, Dennis.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Cook.
That's okay. You were referring to what is and is not allowed in the zoning there. For instance, a restaurant and that sort of thing. What zoning are you referring to? Are you referring to aviation field zoning or the R4 zoning?
The R4, the zoning district and the uses allowed therein. That use table, and I will defer to town council and or Mr. Remble, that use table dictates what can happen. Aviation field is a specific definition that is in the bylaw. If there's nowhere in that definition that it talks about restaurants or anything else. What I'm saying to you is if you have one use that's allowed in a zoning district, you cannot then say, okay, now I'm going to add a restaurant to it. The answer to that is a resounding no, because restaurants are not allowed in the underlying zoning district. So the aviation field is a specific definition. That definition, whatever's in that definition is what's allowed in the R4 district if this board grants a permit. Anything beyond that is not allowed. Restaurants, retail, anything else. And to the extent those activities are engaged in, there's going to be a cease and desist order, and we're going to be brought before this board. There's no plans for any of those things, a restaurant, retail, any of those uses that are currently prohibited in the R4 district. There is no plan, no desire to include any of those uses going forward. To the extent that was a consideration in the past, or people heard a rumor about this, that, or the other thing, I'm here to categorically tell you you can't do it. And if this board was concerned about a restaurant, for example, you could put a condition in the permit that says restaurants are not allowed on this property.
So we're not creating an airport zone.
No, I would defer, if you want to defer to town council, but what you are doing is you're allowing aviation field as a conforming use in the zone. You're not creating a new zone. You're just saying that this specific use at this specific address, 70 Egremont Plain Road, is a conforming use in the R4 district. You're not creating a new zoning district.
David, can you comment on that?
Yes, I would agree. It does not create, in my view, a new zoning district if the board grants the special permit. And I would also say that to the extent that there is concern about other uses that might be contemplated or within the board's scope of consideration, as council suggested, certainly in my view, you could include in any special permit conditions about what are the parameters, what's allowed and what would not be allowed under that special permit.
Lee, go ahead.
So I just want to speak to Dennis's comment about taking a thoughtful approach and how there's two avenues to building the 6 hangars. One coming to the select board as we are now, and the other going to the ZBA. But you mentioned, one of the reasons why you're going before the select board is so that you're able to make, what you say in your statement, minor adjustments and expansions. So when without having to keep going back to the select board to do that. So I'd like for you to speak to what do you mean by that? Because if there's a clear path to building hangars, and what you're looking for is not having to go in front of the select board every time you want to make expansions, what exactly are you talking about that you can't do right now?
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So, as a pre-existing non-conforming use, we are essentially start with what we've got from a structural standpoint. The use is pre-existing, therefore, any code upgrades, any accessibility upgrades, including handicap ramps, any building updates, we have got to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get a special permit, as opposed to somebody who's got a conforming use. If this use is made conforming in the R4 zoning district as it relates to this specific property, then instead of the standard being expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use, which is a very broad definition, and in my experience, just about any change is an expansion. If it's a conforming use, now we are, if we're going to make any adjustment to a structure or to the property, we are left, we say, okay, we're going to go to the zoning bylaw and we're going to make sure that we comply with height. We are going to comply with setback. We are going to comply with lot coverage, general design standards vis-a-vis the planning board, and site plan review. So that's the real difference. If we're made conforming, any structural changes, zoning accessibility, code updates, we can do them so long as the zoning bylaw says we can do them, and so long as from a general design standard standpoint, the planning board says, yes, you have satisfied this board that your proposal meets our standards. So that's the conforming use. Again, currently, any upgrades, be they code, accessibility, increase of anything, even within the footprint, even if we do not expand the footprint of a building, if we change the pitch of a roof, if we dormer a roof, that's an expansion of that pre-existing nonconformity, and that requires a special permit to be issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's what I mean by a more comprehensive and maybe thoughtful. Is not the that's a subjective thing, but a more comprehensive approach to zoning as it relates to this property. And just to reiterate the point, I understand a concern that if we make this thing conforming, have we opened Pandora's box? And again, I hate to repeat myself, but the board has got it within its rights, within its jurisdiction. It's clear the Supreme Judicial Court has ruled time and again that the board can place reasonable restrictions on this use to ensure that we, I think the opponents, and I hear them, and I see that many of them are in good faith concerned, oh my goodness, what happens if we grant this permit? Nothing changes as it relates to takeoffs and landings. Nothing changes as it relates to the type of planes that's restricted by the runway. Nothing changes with hours of operation, and nothing changes. You can't have a restaurant. You can't have anything that's not allowed in the zoning district. And this applicant is very willing to work with the board to come up with reasonable restrictions that we think is going to satisfy all concerns. There's some thought that why don't we submit those reasonable restrictions, and we haven't, because I've quite frankly have said it's not appropriate. It's could be seen as disrespectful to the board. The board's the one that comes up with those restrictions, but we're certainly happy to sit down and be a party to those discussions to come up with reasonable restrictions as it relates to a conforming use of an aviation field.
So Dennis, just to follow that up then, are you saying that there have been no upgrades to anything at the airport that you've had to do, and that's brought you in front of the ZBA?
Just as an example, historically, you went for the ZBA to build the deck, and that was granted, and there was an appeal, and it took a long time, cost tens of thousands of dollars, and it was ultimately abandoned. The same thing happened with a handicap ramp. And so our position is any expansion of pre-existing nonconformity requires, well, first of all, any structural proposal to do anything, we go to the building inspector, who's a zoning enforcement officer. The building inspector makes a determination, is this or is this not an expansion of the pre-existing nonconformity? If it's determined to be an expansion of that pre-existing nonconformity, then by law, we have two options. Either we appeal that determination that it's an expansion and we go before the ZBA, or we file a special permit application before the ZBA. And historically, that's what's happened, and that would happen if we if it was kept the pre-existing nonconformity. So the answer to your question is that any expansion of the pre-existing nonconformity requires us to go before the ZBA, and that's historically what has happened.
Presumably there's a special permit for every building built after 1932?
Any expansion of that pre-existing nonconformity, to the extent the building inspector has determined it's an expansion, would require a special permit. I don't know the permitting history of the airport, but we can certainly get that answer.
So I had a question on Ed's comment about events. So that's something I hadn't even thought about. And my question is, we could just have a whole list of conditions, if this special permit was granted, but there could be something that we fail to think of. And that's one thought. And then the other thought is, cease and desist. I mean, we only have one building inspector that's working, and to have someone that's keeping an eye on all these conditions. I just wonder, with the resources the town have, is that something we would take on?
I would submit to you respectfully that there are many more than one set of eyes as it relates to this airport, and I think there would be no lack of phone calls to the extent that it was perceived that this airport engage in any uses or activities that are prohibited. And I would also submit to you that as someone that does this type of work on a regular basis on behalf of applicants, that is usually what happens. There are special conditions. Usually staff works with the board to formulate those conditions, and Great Barrington is lucky enough to have a talented staff that usually does a good job. And as it relates to events, I hope it didn't come across as being evasive. I think I don't know the events to which Mr. Abrams was speaking, but again, I would submit to you, if the event isn't allowed in the zoning district, it can't happen. And to the extent there is specific events that somebody has in mind, we restrict it. And it's easy, it's also can be as blanketed. And again, this applicant would submit to something again that said there are no new detached structures that can be built. First of all, if you get over the 0.6 that we have left under the Water Quality Protection Overlay District, we need to go for a permit. So from a practical perspective, there's almost no expansion that can happen as far as percentage of lot coverage. But even being that, somebody could get out a calculator and determine there's half an acre more that could be developed, we would, submit to a condition that says that can't happen without a special permit from this board. So, the point is really that the airport is restricted in many ways, both as it relates to lot coverage, length of the runway, the use table. And so, I understand that there is this fear of the unknown and this fear of uncontrolled expansion. I just think a lot of it can be, A, is already restricted, and B, can be further restricted with reasonable conditions.
So Dennis, if in regards to upgrades and maintenance, I mean, it sounds like the applicant has in mind, expansion, whether it's upgrades of ADA ramps or maintenance. So it sounds like there are plans to expand it somehow.
No, as I've stated unequivocally, Ms. Davis, the only expansion that is planned is the hangars. To the extent there's maintenance, a roof or something like that, or siding, that can be done currently without any permit. What I'm talking about is things like a handicap ramp or some zoning or code upgrade that may come up down the road. And we're speaking historically, because historically, under the pre-existing non-conforming status, when we've gone for permits for things like a handicap ramp, it's granted, it's appealed, everyone spends a lot of time, aggravation, cost. Whereas in this case, if it's a conforming use, if we comply with the use tables, heights, setbacks, the different restrictions, lot coverage, we've got the added water quality protection overlay district that says you can't have more than 10% lot coverage. To town council's point, as it relates to the water quality protection overlay district and a permit granted there under it, the answers to the questions of will construction of the hangars or use of the hangars include handling of toxic or hazardous materials? The answer is a resounding no, and we're happy to have those conditions written into the permit. And as to the question of will the use of the hangars increase the level of handling of toxic or hazardous materials, again, the answer is resounding no. Don't take our word for it. Write it as a condition to the permit. So, a lot of what we've heard from opponents is the airport's going to do one thing, say one thing, and do another. The fact of the matter is, put a condition on there. Again, while there's one building inspector, regardless of the municipality, that's the building inspector is charged with certain things and is authorized to investigate any complaints it receives or any issues that the building inspector observes. And so I respectfully, don't think it's a proper consideration as to whether or not to issue a permit. I don't think it's a proper consideration as to whether or not the building inspection department is staffed appropriately to handle it. I absolutely see your view as it relates to a practical perspective. I just think it's addressed through reasonable conditions.
Is there a way to get a list of upgrades that the airport has performed through the history, or see what permits they've received from the ZBA or otherwise?
Yeah, all those. The answer is I'm happy to get those to you, but to the extent you wanted a disinterested objective observer, those permits are all on file with the building inspection department. But I can certainly get those if you're asking me to get that for you.
Is that something would be easier for the town to get, or Chris?
We should be able to supply that.
If the question is, have there been upgrades that were considered expansions of the pre-existing non-conforming use, and have those permits been applied for? The answer is yes. And if the question is, were those upgrades done without a permit? The answer is no. But again, we could get that information to satisfy to satisfy the board.
I have another question about conditions. We're not apparently allowed to control the number of takeoffs and landings or the type of aircraft, but there is some sort of agreement with the airport and the National Guard with the use of the landing for the big helicopters. Would we be allowed to make a condition regarding that?
Mr. Cook, I assume that that question is for town council.
I think so.
Yes.
I would suspect that to the extent that there are operations that fell under, I'll say, the general umbrella of Department of Defense, which would be applicable to the National Guard, that if there were conditions that the department felt that it did not want to comply with and the issue were joined, that we would not be able to enforce that.
Would we?
Like there's a higher authority for every condition we'd want to put on it.
David, would we be able, so whether we give the permit or not, we're not able to affect that, in your opinion? In other words,
that would relate to, if you will, or fall under the heading, I would say, of takeoff and landing, which is not a scope of the board's conditions, in my view.
Okay.
My understanding from the last round from 3 years ago was that if we asked the National Guard to stop, they would. I don't remember where I heard that. I think that came up when we were going back and forth. First, we were told we have no say, and later we were told no, the airport could stop it if they wanted to. That's from memory.
What I would say, just to get back to town council's previous comment, is while there are some issues that the airport doesn't have unilateral authority to restrict or prohibit, with the agreement of the applicant, that can overcome. The applicant agrees to certain restrictions. And I don't have authority as it relates to the Black Hawk helicopters, but I just don't want the board to go away from this hearing with the idea that if it doesn't have the jurisdiction vis-a-vis some of these issues, that it can't possibly be written into the permit as a condition. That, I mean, as I said, and probably ad nauseum, the airport is open and welcomes reasonable conditions on the permit.
So that was a question I had that hasn't been answered. How did the Black Hawk helicopters begin using the airport?
As best I can tell, that was pre-existing. That arrangement predated current ownership. There's no agreement, no formal agreement with the National Guard. As far as I know, it's a conducive place for them to conduct their training exercises, and certainly to date, the airport has wanted to be helpful to the National Guard in the unfortunate event that there is an emergency arises. The airport has taken the view that we would rather have the National Guard be familiar with the facility, much the same way it would want. It serves as the helipad in the event there's Life Flight or Lifestar, any of those things. It would just taken, the approach that, why are we going to, why would we do something contrary to what the Army National Guard has thought would be appropriate for them and of use to the community writ large.
Would that be something the applicant would be open to no longer allowing for the Army National Guard to use the runways now that they are familiar with the location?
It may be. The reason I answer it that way is because I have not had a specific discussion about whether or not what the airport's feeling on that. But again, I think this is exactly the type of dialogue that the applicant welcomes, is very happy to have, and something that we could easily get an answer to and get back to you.
I would appreciate that, please.
Anyone else? So my plan was to close the public hearing, continue this special permit application until 10/26. David, do you see any problem with doing that?
Mr. Chairman, based on the exchange that just occurred, if there's additional information that the applicant or counsel is to provide that would be of relevance as the board considers both its decision and any conditions it might impose, you would need, in my view, to keep the hearing open in order to receive that information.
I don't think we're waiting for, and nothing came up tonight that we were waiting for.
There was a question just now about whether the applicant would be willing to accept some kind of condition regarding the helicopter use.
And I also asked about other permits, special permits that the airport had applied for and received or were denied.
Do you have a motion to continue the public hearing to October 26th at 6 p.m. through virtual means?
So moved.
Okay, second. Any other discussion by the board? Seeing none, it's a roll call vote. Lee?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And aye. Eventually, I'm going to tell you that we're going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to be right one of these times.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask a point of clarification? Is the board going to seek the information with respect to permits from the building inspection department, or is that something that you want me to get to?
Chris, or Mark, do you want to answer that?
Town staff can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, moving ahead. We have citizen speak time. I will remind you that discussion about any active special permits are not allowed during citizen speak time. So please raise your hand, and if you would like to speak, and I will recognize you. So I see one up, Haynes. I'm not sure how to pronounce the first name. You are unmuted if you unmute yourself. And give me your name and address.
Good evening. It's Dr. Haynes, 220 North Plain Road.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk this evening. I'm hoping that the select board can help me and other citizens with a pressing problem. As we are increasingly aware, the present COVID situation is making communication more challenging.
You muted yourself again.
Somehow you got muted. There you go. Thank you.
So what did we miss?
Challenging.
Yes, start from the beginning. We got your name.
Okay, challenging. As we are increasingly aware, the present COVID situation is making communication more challenging. Tonight, for instance, Zoom is being used. Sometimes people need IT help, and previously Mason Library provided some assistance. Last fall, I was able to get some IT assistance. Recently, I contacted that staff member again, but was informed that our library has no cameras to permit Zoom or share screen help. I then spent a month leaving phone messages and emails with Mark, who finally copied a limited response to Amanda. Amanda and I exchanged 2 emails. In the last email, she wrote, quote, "We do not have the ability to share screens and have only just received a shipment of web cameras, which have not been installed yet. We do not have a dedicated technology person, so we all share the burden. We are able to help with minor tech questions, but by no means can we offer what Apple or Staples does." She ended with, "At this time, I cannot offer remote assistance." I am asking the board's help tonight to work with Mark and Amanda. Amanda has expressed that she does not have staff resources. However, I am aware that most public libraries have very robust IT capability. I don't suggest that a full-time dedicated technology specialist be hired. I would hope that the library staff would get ongoing training as part of their work requirements. I would also note that many public libraries, for instance, Amherst Library, use their Friends of the Library to provide patron IT help. What can the select board do? If the library feels unable to provide this help, can you recommend that they identify friends of the library or others who might work with patrons? We share a responsibility to our elder neighbors who often need such public assistance. This is a quality of life issue. So I will end with the question, is the select board willing to provide some direction? Thank you.
So thank you. We will get back to you on that. It's first we've heard of it, so we will get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Tad Hewer?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification for the next hearing. Could you just provide some clarification as to what the public comment will be or will not be? I certainly understand if the period is to be closed this evening, that the applicant have one last chance. It sounds like there'll be more than one bite at that apple, and I think there's a concern about equity.
Yeah, we've had all the public comment we're going to have. I think we have been very fair about this. So the board is now wrapping up and getting into their decision-making process.
Certainly. I'm just concerned about Mr. Egan's comments about slick attorneys and others. I think that was probably a reference to me, and those going essentially unrebutted.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Steve?
Yes.
Maybe we could say that while the hearing is still open, we're still accepting written comments.
Well, we always accept written comments, right? As you know. Seeing no other hands up. Oops. Somehow, Danny Bell.
Hi, it's actually Hillary Rush. Hi.
Yeah.
I'm a recent resident of Great Barrington, and I'm sorry I was late to the party, but I now live in Housatonic with my mother, and I didn't know if there was any update as to the scenario with Housatonic water.
There was an update at the beginning of the meeting, and it's still an ongoing. We're still working on it. We're working on a couple of reports and RFPs. So
Okay.
We have not forgotten about it.
I'll go on YouTube. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Select board time. Lee.
None for me.
Kate.
I have a couple of things because I didn't make it in time for our select board announcements at the beginning. I would like to ask that we review how our current police hate crime policy was upheld during the incident that happened at the church, and make changes to the current policy if it's found deficient. I'm wondering if we can work with the police and Mark on that. I also wanted to make note, I know on our next agenda, there's going to be a territory acknowledgement statement that we're going to discuss. But I did want to, as we reach Indigenous Peoples Day weekend, I wanted to acknowledge that we as a town are on Mohican territory.
Let's see who's next. Is that okay?
That's it. Thank you.
Bill. Ed.
Nothing.
And nothing for me. Any media time? Seeing none, by unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a very good meeting.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, everyone.